Hello, everyone. This is Henny Espinosa with Just Wish Foundation. Today, we are joined by two ladies from Louisiana who have taken mother-daughter goals to the next level. They are actually the first mother and daughter to go to a medical institution at the same time under the same program. Let us welcome Cynthia and Jasmine Kudji. Hello, ladies.
Hi, thank you for having us.
Oh, and thank you for sharing your story. So I'll start with, did you ladies ever think that your story would go viral?
No.
Let's start with you, Cynthia.
No, actually, when Jasmine had made the post, I had no clue what was going on. And it wasn't until the media got in contact with me and I was just like, wait, what? What did my daughter do?
How about you, Jasmine? Were you like, wow, this is a first? Were you surprised when people started talking about it from all over the country and maybe all over the world?
You know, I initially posted it in this Facebook group that I was in medical school. It's like a young Black doctors group. And I just really posted it just to say like, hey, we finally graduated, you know? And then from there, it just kind of went all over the place and I was not expecting that at all. Yeah.
What kind of messages did you guys receive from people all over? Like, were you overwhelmed by the, messages of love and support that you received from family, friends, even strangers?
Oh yeah, definitely. We got messages from all over the world, from Spain, from Aruba, from Africa, just almost every continent. A lot of women, men, young people, older women, older men. And I think the story just touched all age groups, and which was, I think, for me, just really surprising.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, I think the most surprising thing for me was the response that we got from everyone in Ghana. Because, we are Ghanaian. And I think, seeing two Ghanaian American women, my mom immigrated here, succeed and kind of achieve that American dream, I think that really, really resonated over there because it really is a big deal. It's a huge deal to come from, essentially nothing, and then to have the support of your family and build this lifestyle and have this career that, is just never ending.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of Ghana, Cynthia, let's talk about, because you immigrated to the US when you were only 2 years old, right?
Correct.
And
correct.
Your family settled in Louisiana, but tell us about that trip when you were young back to Ghana that really inspired you to be a doctor.
Absolutely. So my mom wanted us to have this family trip to go back, and she had been planning it for years while I was in high school and I was young. She saved a little bit. And so for her, everybody needed to go and everybody needed to experience and see what Ghana was like. Well, when we were there, this lady just, it was like my mom and I were just kind of standing there talking. And this lady came up to us with her child, and she was saying that her child was sick and that she wanted us to help her. And I'm 17 years old, right? And my mom immediately took the child and started putting her in water and telling me to dump the water on her to get the fever down. And I'm just doing whatever my mom says to do. And that in and of itself, the fact that in Ghana, at that time, a lot of people just didn't have a lot, and, clean water was an issue. Yeah. Having electricity was a major issue. And when I got back to the States, that for me was life-changing because this complete stranger, because we were Americans, right? She trusted us to take care of her child, and that blew me away because I was like, Mom, why didn't she go to the hospital? Why didn't she go see a doctor? And because of the mere fact that we were from America, she trusted us with her sick child, and she had all faith that we were going to take care of her, and And I was like, oh my God, how is it that someone that comes from so little, just had so much faith just because of where we came from, and it really, really touched my heart, that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to, to be a part of that most intimate moment. I wanted to make a difference.
So tell us kind of what happened, because of, what was it, like just 5 years after that trip to Ghana, you got pregnant, right? With Jasmine. So tell us about kind of how your dream of becoming a doctor was put on hold.
Yeah. So when I graduated from high school, I had got accepted at Tulane. I was all excited, and my senior year at Tulane, I got pregnant, and initially I was supposed to go to like medical school, but my dreams really had to be put on hold, because at that point I needed a job, I needed a career, I needed to bring in an income, and I needed to get ready for this little one that was on the way. And so, it was a tough decision, but I talked to my pastor, and I remember him saying, why don't you do nursing? And I was like, I don't want to be a nurse, I want to be a doctor. He was like, no, you'll still be in the medical field. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went to nursing school, and I had Jasmine, and every time I would go to class, I would bring Jasmine with me. And every time I had to study, she would always get sick right before a test would come. But anyway, and so, I remember one time I was sitting in class, and the teacher didn't even know she was there. And somebody, I think she sneezed, and the professor was like, was that a baby in the classroom? I'm like, baby in the classroom.
So you brought her everywhere when she was little. Jasmine, what was that like for you, kind of being exposed? I mean, you were studying medicine and nursing and all that. Even when you were little, you were exposed to that at such a young age. What was that like for you?
So honestly, it was totally normal. I didn't know anything else. I thought it was perfectly fine to be a little kid running through the hospital and through the college campuses and whatnot. And I think that, having that comfortability, in those spaces, just made it really natural for me to go into medicine. I didn't see any other way, honestly.
So you always, when you ask kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, you always knew, even when you were little, that you wanted to be a doctor as well. Did you know that your mom wanted to be a doctor when she was younger?
Oh yeah, I always knew that my mom wanted to be a doctor. Always knew. But growing up, I of course went through my phases. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a real estate agent. I'm gonna be a chef. I don't know. I had all the phases. But going through middle school and high school, I always kind of still ended up in the hospital. When I was shadowing people. Some of my friends' parents were doctors, and I used to be like, oh, you're a cardiologist? That sounds cool. Let me come to work with you, Yeah. And so I just always had that influence around me. And so it just made sense to go into medicine.
For your part, Cynthia, at what point were you like, when Jasmine was kind of at that point where she was making decisions for herself, at what point were you like, okay, it's time to focus on myself now and realize what I wanted to do when I was younger and become a doctor? At what point did you say, okay, it's my turn now?
Definitely when Jasmine went going to college. She had gotten I think she was telling me that she was going to come home on the weekends, and I was going to do her laundry, and I just kind of looked at her like, that's nice. So I was like, you know what I'm gonna do? Because she went to college very young, and she skipped grades, so she's always been very smart and always did well in school. And so I felt like, she would be able to handle the fact of me being in medical school. So when she was 17, I decided, you know what, this is time. I'm gonna take this opportunity while I have it.
And how old were you at this time, Cynthia?
So I started medical school at 43.
Was that daunting for you, or did you feel like, no, like there was no hesitation on your part to do this?
So there was no hesitation as far as knowing that I wanted to go. But financially, I mean, I was a nurse practitioner by then. I had a career. I was making money. So financially, that was not a good decision.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
don't nurse practitioners earn kind of in the same level as doc? Like, I know a lot of nurse practitioners that are like, I'm okay where I'm at.
Yeah. So financially, I mean, I wasn't making doctor salary, but I did well for myself, and I was comfortable, with that, with my lifestyle. So financially, that was not something I would say that made me want to go to medical school, because all my friends were, practitioners, and I had a good lifestyle and I was comfortable, but no. And then my loans were almost paid off, and so
but there was always something in you that you were like, I really need to fulfill this life goal of mine.
Absolutely. I mean, when I had made a decision that this is what I wanted to do, there was no other decision. It was tough. Even like Jasmine talks about my first night because I went to the Caribbean. My first night in the Caribbean, and we touched down, and I saw the cows in the middle of the street, and I saw the monkeys, and I was like, oh, that's different. And then, I got in there, we got the internet going, and I'm talking to Jasmine, I'm telling her how excited I am, and then all of a sudden the internet goes out. And I'm sitting there like, can you hear me? And she's like, no. And I'm like, and I completely lost my mind.
So you took your medical school was in the Caribbean?
My medical school was in the Caribbean, right?
Oh,
and so when I left, I left the US, so I was okay, because I was like, I can talk to Jasmine, we can communicate, we'll be okay. But the fact that now I'm sitting there talking to her, and I had no internet, and I lost my mind, and I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna be able to do this.
So how long did you stay there? How long were you like, oh, I can still do this? Or, did you finish there, or did you move back to the US?
Yeah, so I finished there. I think I stayed on the island for like 3 years.
Wow.
And Jasmine, then when I was there on the island, Jasmine calls me up and tells me that she got into medical school too. And of course, we're screaming and just jumping up and down and losing our minds.
Jasmine, what was that like for you? Oh my God, when you got the good news and your mom is going through it, were you like, oh my God, this is something that my mom and I can really share together, this journey?
Yeah, it was super, super exciting. I remember, opening my letter and just screaming and crying and running around the living room. Actually, I think I ran around so much that I fell. I tripped and fell. But, it was just such an exciting moment. And, just to know that I was going through it with my mom just made it that much, more exciting. And I remember, my mom, when she was on the island, like, it wasn't an easy time for her, so that was another thing, that I had to think about, was like, okay, I'm about to start this journey that isn't easy, but I already knew that it was, I was capable of doing it because my mom was doing it.
But how were you guys able to support each other? Because of course, on your own, it was already tough. Cynthia was in the Caribbean, and you were here, but you kept communicating. Was that it? How did you guys, stay supportive through it all?
Yeah, we had Skype. That was primarily what we used. We would get on Skype and, just start talking about everything, our day,
when you have internet, Cynthia. when you do have internet.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we had to make sure that internet connection was strong, because without it, oh my goodness, who knows what would have happened.
So let's talk about that moment when, Cynthia, you came back to the US, right? When you guys actually entered the same residency program together in the same institution. How did that happen?
So So the way the medical school, and it's something called a match, where you rank the places where you would like to go. So you interview at all these different places, all these different institutions, which, to put out applications is very expensive. So that in of itself was an issue, right? So then, and mind you, I don't have a job, and I'm relying on financial aid. Jasmine doesn't have a job. She's relying on financial aid, and that's all the income that we have, right? So we were able to get the applications out, and then at the end of your applications, you go on these interviews, and you kind of ask questions, and then you rank 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 where you would like to be, right?
Okay.
And then the institutions also rank you where out of all the hundreds of however many people they've interviewed, who they would like in their program. And so you both have to match. And so I ended up ranking Louisiana, Lafayette, and she ended up ranking Lafayette, LSU. Both of us ranked LSU number 1. And so and then I guess LSU must have ranked us high too. And so that's what you call the match.
Wow. And that's highly unusual. I mean, it's never happened to some mother and daughter at the same time. Jasmine, what was that like for you? Were you like, wow, how amazing is that? And this was like at the start of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning of the pandemic. And honestly, finding out about Match was a really emotional moment. Just because medical school is extremely difficult. It's a little bit traumatizing in ways. And so when you match, it's like, wow, this journey is over. This part of this journey is over. I made it through. And a lot of times, usually programs have match day ceremonies where your school throws this big kind of ceremony and everyone opens up their envelopes and they find out where they're going. But for us, it wasn't like that at all because it was the beginning of the pandemic. So, I believe my mom was in Alabama and I was in Louisiana. We're both, on lockdown, and we just got our emails. We opened up our emails at the same time. We're both on the phone. We're like, did you match? And we're like, yeah, I matched. Where'd you match? LSU. Oh, like, we're just like yelling, and we're both just crying. It was just like super, super emotional, because you've ended one part of your journey. And now you're about to go into another part of it. And for us, you're about to go into another part of it in the midst of a pandemic. So it was a lot to take in, you know?
Yeah. So what was that like? I mean, we can imagine how stressful it has been for frontline workers during the pandemic. I mean, you guys really are our heroes. But what was that like for you guys to experience that? Seeing all that, seeing how really dire the situation was for so many people.
Yeah, it was scary. I think intern year in itself is scary because you go from being a student to actually being a doctor who is making decisions and who people are trusting their lives with. And of course, there's always a hierarchy, where there's people above you that you can ask questions to. But during this time period, the hospitals were so overwhelmed and everyone was kind of being asked to take on responsibilities that normally you wouldn't be asked to take on so early. So it was definitely a steep learning curve, right? And very intimidating. But I think at the end of the day, it made us better doctors.
Absolutely.
How was it for you, Cynthia?
I think the most difficult part was, there was a lot of misinformation at that time. And so we did a lot of education, and it was very scary for family members because once they realized that they had this COVID, right, then it was the reality that, oh my God, this is real. And, my loved one or myself could actually not make it, the reality of that. And I just never got over telling somebody that they had COVID. It was almost boom. That just kind of was just over them, and I'll never forget the scene where we had a 30-year-old in ICU, all the pressures on them, the ICU, we call them vasopressors to keep the blood pressure going, and he died. and his sister on the floor just screaming and crying, and you just never get over certain scenes in your head.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess for us, it's always been about, you know, I think educating the public and letting them know, you know, that, hey, look, getting the vaccine is important. You know, wearing the mask is important. Staying 6 feet away from each other is important, you know, and demystifying the myths and the, you know, and trying to just really save lives through education.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Did you guys end up working in the same floor? Did you guys actually have the chance to work together side by side during this crazy time?
Yeah, we did. So it wasn't per se side by side because we were in different fields. So I was in surgery, mom was in family medicine, but we definitely shared the same patients, you know? And so there would be times where I would be like, hey, what are you doing for this person, you know? Or what should I do for this person, you know? So yeah, it was great.
Were they like, which Dr. Kudji are you working?
Oh my goodness, yes. Even to this day, because we're in the same, you know, in the same state, and so we share medical records and whatnot. I will get messages intended for my mom, and you know, the same thing for her. And it's crazy because her name is hyphenated, mine is not. So it should be very easy to tell us apart, but apparently it's not.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about kind of representation. I understand that's really important for you guys to make sure that there's representation for younger girls, you know, when it comes to the medical field. Why is that so important for you guys?
I think I think for me, when I grew up, there was just not that African American image. I remember going when I was in college, when the Cosby Show would come on, or A Different World would come on, where it would show an African American physician or an African American attorney, you know, or even African Americans in college. You know, that was huge for us, you know, because it just really, it showed that, you know what, it was absolutely possible, you know, that we could do this. I remember when I started college, I felt like I might not be as smart as my counterparts, you know, you know, and what if I just, you know, what if I'm not as smart as them? And because I'm not as smart as them, I might be able to complete this degree, you know? And so I do not want anybody to feel like, you know, race has, you know, race matters, you know, because it just doesn't. And it shouldn't, you know? But so for me, representation has always been something that's just very vital to the success of not just African Americans, but just, you know, anybody that's person of color, or anybody that's going through any kind of trials. You know, you've got to know that your dream is not only possible and doable if you put work in, that, you know, you can see success. You know, yeah, there are going to be barriers, you know, and I get it, but you 100% can be successful.
How about for you, Jasmine?
You know, I think the most important thing for me is showing kids, one, that we're here, and not that we're just here and doing the job, but we're here to support other people, you know, because that is something that is super, super important in any career to excel, that you need help from other people. You need someone to say, hey, I, you know, ran into these obstacles and this is how you can avoid them, you know, or, you know, these are the resources I use. Here you go. You can have them. You know, I think that's the most important part about being in any sort of position of power, you know. You know, I think as residents, you know, we're the lowest on the totem pole in the hospital. So we forget, you know, that years ago, we were dreaming about being in this position, and there are other little girls and little boys who want to be in this position.
For sure.
You know, but they see how long the road is, and they see all of these obstacles, and they don't know how to get around it. You know, and that's one of the reasons why when we first matched, we tried to start a blog, just to kind of explain to people, like, how do you do this? How do you become a surgery resident? How do you become a family medicine resident? Because no one answers those questions for you, you know? And so that's the most important part to me about being in this position, is providing information and resources to people.
And that's why I truly admire you ladies, because you know, you've achieved so much, and you know, you're using your platform to inspire other women, other young people, and you're letting them know that it's, you know, the information that they need to get to the point where they need to be. And so I know that, you know, probably so many people have reached out to you guys, you know, to help or to support you guys. And so for us at Just Wish Foundation, and of course our founder, Mr. Jack Wu, we wanted to support you by you know, through a monetary donation, because we feel like you guys will be able to use that for good. And so we were chatting earlier about kind of what plans you guys have in mind to really use your platform for good. So tell us a little bit about what you guys have in mind.
Yeah, I think, you know, for us, our dynamic is mother-daughter. It's always been the two of us against the world, you know, but at the same time, we've always had support. You know, there's never been a time where we've been hungry and someone didn't reach out to help, you know, right. So being able to do that for other people is super, super important to us. So one idea that we have is, you know, finding a mom who's in college, like my mom was, and helping her with her school books or her tuition or whatever it is that she needs to get to that next level, so that she can care for herself and complete her education and care for her child.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And if we find that, then we'd also be open to maybe doing a medical student, you know, because we always need a medical student.
It's always medical school is expensive. Yeah, for sure. For sure. I really am so inspired by both of you ladies. And I, you know, also for women who feel that it may be too late to reach for their dreams, Cynthia, you've definitely showed them it's never too late. And it's sweeter sometimes. Success is sweeter when it's shared with a loved one. And, you know, who better than a mom, right? Or a daughter. So thank you so much for sharing your story to us. Thank you for inspiring us, and really more power to both of you.
Thank you so much.